The Pulsar brand is celebrating 25 years this year, and in the last few months and the few months that are going to be coming, we're going to be seeing a lot of action on the Pulsar front. The latest of which is the addition to the N160 lineup, the N160 S and the SS. What we have here is the N160 SS, which is the flagship of the now N160 range. The changes aren't necessarily cosmetic, they are way beyond skin deep, with a bunch of additions in terms of features and an overhauled engine. Is that enough to make it the king of the 160cc class? That's what we're going to find out here today. But before we proceed, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this content, share it with like-minded enthusiasts, and smash that bell icon to stay notified for all of our video drops. Now, cosmetically, the N160 doesn't get very much that's new for it, and that's because Bajaj has decided to take the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach, and I quite agree with them. When it first launched a couple of years back, it didn't get off to great reception, but over years, people have really started to appreciate the design of the motorcycle, as have I. So it's a good thing that they've not done much to mess with the formula. What they have done to keep it fresh for 2026 is given it new graphics, a new cowl over here, a new mudguard, and stuff like that. The grab rails are color matched, like you can see over here with this black and red theme. You have a nice carbon fiber-esque stickering job over here. So overall, the bike looks very familiar. It still looks nice and aggressive, not as aggressive as the NS160 or not as plain Jane as the regular Pulsar 160 either. Like the classic range is what I'm talking about. So on the styling front, I feel like they've done a great job of retaining what works for it with adding a little more flair to it. And then we get to the new changes that make this N160 SS stand out from the rest of the range. Now, moving on to what's actually new with this motorcycle, there's a lot going on the features front. There's a lot going on in the engine department as well. We'll get to the engine a little later. Let's start with the features. Primarily new is the new instrument cluster, this SS top-end variant. You get a 5-inch colour-TFT screen with Bluetooth plus Wi-Fi connectivity. So that's a big deal because that enables things like Google Map mirroring, things you don't see in this segment at all, only on bikes like the Himalayan 450 and so on. So essentially you get full screen Google Map view over here. Now the handlebar is more or less the same, but Bajaj tells us for this SS variant, it's been angled a little up so you're not reaching for it too much. On the standard variant, you get a new handlebar that is around 39mm taller and 19mm towards the rider, but that's not the case on this. At the front, the forks are now 37mm units, upside down forks, instead of 33mm units. Moving behind, you have a split seat design. In terms of other features, you have a ride-by-wire system now because the throttle body is on this engine, which is now a 4-valve engine on the top spec S and SS variant. It gets an electronic throttle body which enables ride-by-wire, which enables ride modes, traction control, and all of those good things. The ride modes are not like the Apache, which are based on the engine calibration. They're genuine ride modes that also control the way the throttle reacts. So you have 4 primary modes to choose from. That's rain, road, sport, off-road, and then there's a 5th tour mode, which doesn't necessarily affect the performance of the motorcycle. It essentially uses road mode as a base, but the screen, it displays more touring-centric information like your distance to empty, average fuel economy, and so on. Now, apart from that, you get a 130 section rear radial tire. You get dual channel ABS at both ends. You get a Type-C USB charging port over here. You get a front brake that is 300mm in size. The rear brake remains to be a 230mm unit. So like I said, dual channel ABS is also available on this. You get new switch gear to control the TFT screen. There's a new app that you can use to control all of this, because this screen, it also allows you to store your documents and so on, apart from all the other connectivity features that you expect from it. So that's about it on the changes. Let's see how all of this adds up in the real world. Alright, now let's start with the main change that is here for the new SS N160, and that is the engine. Now the engine, it gets a new 4-valve head instead of a 2-valve head, and not only that, the entire head unit is new. You have a different combustion chamber, you have bigger valves along with having 2 more. The air and oil cooler is all new. The lower half of the engine with the gear ratio, the sprockets, all of that remains unchanged. Now in terms of numbers, you're getting the same displacement, but the power has gone up from roughly 15.5 bhp to 18.2 bhp. Torque has gone down from 14.65 Nm to 14.6 16.2 Nm of torque. Now peak power is made at 9,500 RPM and peak torque is made at 8,000 RPM. But Bajaj tells us that they've done a lot of work to ensure that despite this being a higher revving engine, the redline cutoff is somewhere around 11,000 RPM, so that's quite high for a single cylinder of this displacement. They have made sure that the tractive effort remains more or less similar to that of the two-valve head engine. Now, to a large extent that is true. It is a fairly tractable motor, but it doesn't have as meaty a low end and a mid-range as the two-valve head did. But where it does compensate for that is with a more explosive top end. Now with that comes another thing that this misses out on a sixth gear. Now you really won't feel the need for a sixth gear if you're happy cruising at around 80 to 85 kmph, but anything beyond that and the engine does start to feel a little busy. I wouldn't call it vibey because the refinement is quite good overall. Across the rev range, the refinement is quite good with this engine, but you will feel the need for a sixth gear to just take the revs back a little to cruise at a similar speed that you would in fifth gear. But again, this is not so much a complaint if you're happy with an 80 kmph cruising speed or thereabouts. For the city, I feel it's great. There's also a new crawl feature in the engine which essentially manages the revs for you. So if you were to just not give any throttle or clutch input, it will to a large extent avoid the engine from stalling even if you're at a slower speed at a higher gear. So that works pretty well. Now the clutch and gearbox, like I said, is very similar to that from the two-valve engine. In fact, it's identical, as are the nice tactile shifts and the smooth slick clutch operation. So none of that changes and none of that should also, because that has been pretty sorted right from the get-go. The only thing I said that could be different was the addition of the sixth gear, but again that comes back to my point that if you're willing and happy to cruise at 80 kmph, you can do this comfortably with the current setup as it is. If you would like to cruise at 90 kmph, which this engine can actually do quite stress-free, you would have appreciated a sixth gear. Now that is on the engine front. Now how they managed to get all of this extra power apart from the head being different with the addition of the two new valves is with the change of the bore and stroke. Now the displacement, like I said, hasn't changed, but the bore and stroke now makes for a more over square design, the exact numbers of which are on your screen right now. So all in all, they have taken this N160 to the next level in terms of performance. It's just what you value more will make you want to choose this over the two-valve engine or vice versa. On the ride and handling front, things remain more or less unchanged, and that's a good thing. What's new is the suspension setup. At the front, you have a 37 mm dia front fork instead of the 33 mm front fork that you had on the previous models, and that just adds a bit more stability and cushioning to the ride. Now, the rider's triangle again remains more or less unchanged if you're riding the SS, with the only revision being that the handlebar is slightly more upward facing rather than completely new with a longer, taller and a closer to you stance that you will get on the S and the below variants. One thing that is also working for the N160 in terms of ride and handling, especially on this SS variant, is the fact that it gets a radial rear tire. Again, not something that you see in the other motorcycles in this class or even in the variants that sit below this. Now, apart from that, ride quality has always been a plus point of the N160 and it remains to be. Braking is taken care of by a larger 300 mm front disc on this top end SS variant and a 230 mm disc at the rear. You also get dual channel ABS as standard fitment. Braking performance, like I said, very good. You rarely feel ABS interruption. When we were pulling stoppies is when we felt a little, but again, that's not what the bike is meant for. The N160 is sort of a perfect middle ground between the Classic and the NS, and to that end, it straddles that line rather nicely. The seating position is that of a very comfortable upright commanding stance, not particularly poised to attack corners, but also not very relaxed that you're just going to comfortably cruise around. It's a nice in-between like the motorcycle is intended to be. And because it is so similar to the model that it is sitting on top of, the seat height is the same at 795 mm, so it's going to be accessible for riders of most shapes and sizes. The curb weight still remains 151 kilos despite the fact that it gets a new head for the engine. That's because the engineers have done a little tinkering with the frame, used slightly different tubing for the engine, so that has allowed them to pull back the weight that they gained with the new head. Now this is a change that we can expect to reflect in the regular two-valve engined bike sometime in the future. They've not done that just yet. So as it stands, as of watching and filming this video, this still weighs 151 kilos, just like the standard N160 does. Apart from that, like I said, it's more or less the same bike, and that's a great thing because there were never really any problems with the ride and handling setup in the N160, and that remains to be the case even right now, even with the extra power. Now, apart from the engine, what differentiates the SS as the flagship variant in the N160 line is the fact that it gets this new 5-inch colour-TFT screen, which looks very nice in my opinion. Even under harsh sunlight you can see it clearly. But what's interesting is the sort of features that it has, most notably of which is the fact that you can mirror Google Maps full screen onto your instrument cluster without having to rely solely on turn-by-turn navigation. This is something that we've seen with the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 and the Gorilla 450 in the past, and again it's a very similar implementation of the same. So if you have an Android phone, you can set up the Google Maps, put the destination, and you can lock your phone. With an iPhone, you still need to keep the screen on so that it can mirror continuously. This is something that I feel like they should upgrade to a fact where even the iOS screen can be shut, but nevertheless it's a cool feature to have in a motorcycle of this segment, and it's the first motorcycle in this segment to have such a feature. Apart from that, you can store your documents on the screen. You also have different ride modes that you can choose from. You also can switch traction control on or off, and the traction control is also possible because of the fact that this has an electronic throttle body which enables ride-by-wire. So like I said, the ride modes themselves are also properly calibrated, and they're not just engine maps, but they're also throttle maps which they can control because the electronic throttle body is electronic and not mechanical only. Now, apart from that, you get adjustable levers for the brake and the clutch. You get a USB Type-C charger, and there are a bunch more features that I'm not probably getting into for the sake of time. But like I said, this is a properly kitted out motorcycle now that's properly taking the fight to the Apache 164V, which of course is its primary rival. Now, coming back to the ride modes, there is a proper difference in the way the modes are calibrated, with rain mode getting the least amount of performance and the least sharpest throttle response. As you work your way up from rain to road to sport and off-road, the throttle response does get that much sharper. Now, off-road mode in my opinion is more of a gimmick because you can't really switch off ABS at the rear, and this is not really the sort of motorcycle that's meant to go off-road. But again, it's a nice feature to check on the spec sheet for someone looking to buy a motorcycle of this class. There's a fifth tour mode, which again, like I said before, doesn't really affect the engine map. It affects the display more than anything, which gives you more important parameters for riding, like distance to empty, average fuel economy, and stuff like that. You also have a lap timer, you have a 0 to 60 kilometers per hour timer, and all of those features to keep a young enthusiast properly entertained for a motorcycle like this. Now, the screen, it is implemented rather nicely. It's not the slickest screen in the business, but it is not unbearably slow either. It's a very simple layout, very similar to that of the KTMs. You have 4 buttons, one for enter, one for cycling up or down, and one to exit your screen. So that's pretty much what you get on the features front, and that's about it. The top spec N160 SS flagship variant with the colour-TFT screen that you see here is roughly 1,43,000 ex-showroom, which places it smack in the territory of the top-end Apache 160 and the Hero Extreme 164V. Within a couple of $1,000 off each other is where all three motorcycles sit, and for that, I feel with the sort of features that you're getting with this, it definitely takes the fight to them strong-shouldered. Now, this motorcycle is a good step up over the 2V. The addition of a 6th gear would have been welcome, but again, that's not much of a problem. It just depends on what sort of riding you intend to do. The ride and handling setup is still solid. It feels properly sporty when you want it to. At the same time, the suspension setup is set up in a way that you can handle all that India's roads have to throw at you, and when you see a good set of corners, you can enjoy that as well. Refinement levels are solid, build levels are great. The features integration is really nice to see that a brand like Bajaj is properly diving headfirst into offering great features at this price point. So what remains to be seen is how it stacks up against something like the TVS Apache RTR 164V or the Extreme 164V. But in my opinion, I feel like that's going to be a very, very interesting fight to see, and that's a comparison I look forward to doing as soon as I can get my hands on all three bikes at the same time. So as it stands, is this the variant you should be getting? Definitely. But bear in mind that there are quite a few variants to choose from. The prices start from as low as around 1,20,000 and go up to 1,43,000 for this variant, all with different features, all with different seat settings, different brake sizes, different tires and all of that. So there is a lot for you to choose from, but if you do land up on this top spec variant, you definitely won't be disappointed. What do you think of the Pulsar N160 SS, the top end variant, and what do you have to say about Pulsar celebrating 25 glorious years of their existence? Let us know in the comment section down below. Do you have any interesting Pulsar stories? Let us know in the comment section down below. Do you want to know anything more about this bike? Again, let us know, and as always, thank you for watching.